Welcome back to the Community Spotlight. This month we are going to highlight the Alzheimer's Association. So I have Herb Magley here with me today, and we're just going to talk about what he does and what the organization does as a whole. Um, Herb, I've known you for almost a year now, and I
Yep.
know that you are very well involved with the Alzheimer's Association. But why don't you let the people know exactly what your role is and what you
Okay.
do?
Yeah, I got started in this. My wife had Alzheimer's. She was developed symptoms at 52. It took us 2 years to get a formal diagnosis, which was terrible. And then we went through 11 more years of this, and I was her primary caregiver. So we did about a third of the time with her at home, a third of the time, and I was still working, a third of the time in adult daycare, which was the best of the three options. And then the last one was she was in a memory care facility for about 3 years. So that's how I got into this. And I decided as I went through this that I realized that the caregiver was another victim in this that just doesn't get reported. And we've now found out that about 1 out of every 5 family Alzheimer's caregivers dies before the person they're taking care of. But if we can get them involved in support groups, education programs, some sort of support, we can do away with that and we don't lose the caregivers. So I decided that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so I've dedicated my life to that. I've started 10 support groups. I have still 5 that I operate, and others have taken over the rest of those. And those are big winners for people. They need to get involved with that. And then I do education programs around. We're doing a full series at Baptist Village. We're going to start one out in Bethany, and I'd like to get one started, maybe at Francis Tuttle or something, and that would be like a once a month for a year. And those things really help. We've come out with what's called the Empowered Caregiver Series. And caregiving for this disease is so terrible. It's so different than everything else that we do that series, and people come out of it knowing how to be a caregiver. I know personally, I stepped on every landmine there was when I was going through this because I was a scientist, and reasoning and logic answers all of my questions, and that's just something that does not work when you're dealing with somebody with Alzheimer's. So anyway, that's what I enjoy doing. I want to help people get through this. I love it when somebody gets to the end of their portion of this disease and they come up and they say, I wouldn't have made it without you and the Alzheimer's Association.
So one of the questions that I have, I realize that it is a national organization, but as far as Oklahoma, are there any estimated numbers as to how many people are affected by the disease?
Yes, nationally it's 7 million. Now, those are the ones that have the disease. There are about twice as many more caregivers that are involved with them, too. Here in Oklahoma, the estimate is there's about 70,000 people that are dealing with the disease, and probably twice that many caregivers. Almost 200,000 people here in Oklahoma that are dealing with this disease. And we have a problem in Oklahoma because we're so rural.
Mm-hmm.
We can take care of people if they're in Tulsa, or if they're in Oklahoma City, or Enid, or one of the larger towns, but there are so many people that are rural that have no access to support groups or anything else. And that's why 2 of my 5 support groups are also Zoom, so that we can get people in. Amazingly enough, we end up with a lot of people from other states
Wow.
that come into that too. And I've tried to design my caregiver groups to be more or less different times. Like I have one on a Sunday afternoon, and that one's I must have the only afternoon weekend group in the country, because they call it, we have an 800 number people can call and get support groups. And it started with COVID, but it's continued on that. I have people from South Carolina, from Maine, from all over the country that tune in too. So, and groups like that, they shrink as people pass away, and then they balloon back up again. And I have one group that they can bring their loved one with them, and then we split into 2 groups so that the people that have the disease uh, can meet too and talk about, I'm losing my ability to drive a car, or they're trying to take that away from me, or I can't function. They get to talk to each other about what they're dealing with. And that side of it was actually started by 2 gentlemen that had the disease,
Okay.
and they wanted to meet with other people that had it to see what was going on.
So how long are the support group meetings themselves?
Well, that varies.
Okay.
We want people to be able to talk and express, what their concerns are. Typically, we set them up for an hour, but typically they go an hour and a half.
Okay.
And we've had some very difficult times where it's going longer than that. And I'll tell you, Roberto, there are times when I get done with these that I make sure I'm the last person out, shut off all the lights, and I sit in my car and cry. And it's got nothing to do with what I went through or what Gail, my wife, went through. It's you realize what they're going through, and they probably don't know, most of them, how this is going to go and how tough it's going to be.
How many support groups are there in the state?
Oh wow, we have. I'm going to say we have probably a couple dozen here and in Tulsa,
Okay.
and that's mainly where they are. We do have some that are remote, and we do have some that are virtual, and we do have one that kind of helps people get through the disease after it's over.
So we may have people that are watching the video that may be a little hesitant to joining a support group. I guess what advice or words of wisdom would you give those people who
Yeah,
may be on the fence?
it's a great question, and that was me to start off with. I had a friend that said, "Herb, you need to join a support group." And I said, I don't have time for one. I've got a teenage daughter, and that ought to be enough. She was 16 at the time the diagnosis came through. I'm caring for my wife, and I got a full-time job. I don't have time for a support group. And they said, well, you better make time for it. And I said, why? And they said, because the people in that group know more about this disease than the doctors who are treating Gail. And they were right. I learned so much in that. They helped me get through some of the tough times, and as I got more experienced in it, I was able to do that same thing for other people that were coming up. These people know the disease in that support group, and they really help. You come into this and you realize I'm not alone in this. I've got somebody that I can call. I've got somebody I can talk to. And we always try to have one or two that's passed through the disease and comes back to the group so that they can see that there is life after this is over with. So it's that's why we try to encourage people to get involved in a support group, and then of course we tell them the statistic. 1 out of 5 of people like you don't make it through this disease. So and some people refuse to get involved in it. There's just some people that want to don't want to be a part of this. It's the stigma attached to it, and so they refuse to do it. I deal with a lot of people one-on-one too, not in the support group. They'll call me up, and sometimes it'll be 3 o'clock in the morning, and they want to know what to do about this and what to do about that. We also have an 800 number. We have 100 counselors spread around the United States.
Okay.
And you can call that number. You never know which one you're going to get each time, but they are educated in this, they're trained in this, and they've heard just about everything there is with Alzheimer's. They are incredible. And I have some people that call them up every single day.
If people are on the fence, I'm sure that they can call you or call the people at
Yes,
the 800 number to kind of get more information as to what that process actually looks like. Is that correct?
correct. And there are some niche forms of this disease. FARS is another one that I know nothing about, but the counselors do, and they're able to help them through some of those issues too. So
You mentioned, I think part of the problem is not only the stigma, but just getting the word out, right? To let people know
yes,
that there are resources available to them, because some
yeah,
people may or may not know. As a law firm, obviously, I struggle sometimes with trying to get the message out. I feel like the Alzheimer's Association probably the same way. Um, I know that coming up this weekend, by the time that this is filmed and edited, I think will be passed. But the Alzheimer's Walk, is that the main event every year, or are there other activities during the year?
well, we do. There's two main events. The biggest one is the walk, and that's the one that raises enough money for every dollar you donate. 60 cents stays here in this area, and that's why everything we do is free. We don't charge anything for anything that we do, and it's the walk that creates that for us. We also have the longest day, which used to be, obviously June 21st. whatever it happens to be each year. We celebrate that when we turn downtown Edmond purple. We've got 40 purple flags. We've got spinners. We've got balloons and everything, and we have a information table that we move for a week. We decorate on Sunday and get it set up, and then Monday through Saturday we have a table that we move every 3 hours through downtown Edmond, and it's more of an awareness thing than it is a fundraiser. And we end up with about 36 people each year that will stop by that had no idea there was an Alzheimer's association. And we're able to get them, the support group list, when educational programs are and that sort of thing. So that's a big plus. And that happens all over the United States.
Okay.
So there's always somebody doing something. The American Contract Bridge Association is one of the biggest. And they raise a lot of money doing that. Other people, it's just kind of, you try to do something fun, ride bicycles, climb mountains, and of course we don't have any of that around here. But we try to do what we can to get people to be aware that we're here. It took me 2 years to find the Alzheimer's Association after my wife was diagnosed.
Okay.
And we don't want people to be in that boat. We want them to know that we're here and we can help them.
I feel like there's two sides. There's the caregiver side, people who need that support, right? And then there's the staff side, right? Can you tell me a little bit what that process looked like? Is there an application process? I mean, do people have to go through a background check in either of those cases?
Well, we do as the staff. Obviously, people coming into it don't have to, and volunteers. That's kind of depends on what they volunteered doing. You mentioned the walk. We have a ton of volunteers that show up at that. A lot of times it's from the community colleges. They're required to do some sort of community project, and a lot of them for that day that can satisfy what they need. So it's great, and we give them a snack.
Yeah,
we'll give them, I don't know, pigs in a blanket or something like
that. That and coffee,
that's usually
right?
my job. Yeah, right.
Coffee will be important this upcoming weekend. I'm sure it may be a little chilly. So,
Yeah.
So we're gonna have people watching this video. If there's a message that deep down you're always like, I wish I could let the public know this. So, is there a thought or something you can share with them that they otherwise probably wouldn't hear?
Yeah, the best thing they can do is get help. If nothing else, call us up. Our office is at 63rd and Broadway in the Salvation Army building. Get with us and we can help you get through this disease, because this is one of the worst to try to get through. It is so long. Like I said, we went through 13 years of this. The average is 8 to 10 years. It's not something that you want to try to do alone. You want to get some help. Even if it's, even if you're in Woodward and you're calling in or tuning into a Zoom talk, it's going to teach you how to handle this disease. We've had situations where, say the mom has Alzheimer's and the father's taking care of it, and the kids don't even know it until dad dies, and then they go in and they see mom, and they had no idea mom was dealing with Alzheimer's.
And there's a lot of companies out there that can help supplement, right? So I think that you guys, the benefit of going through you guys is that you've kind of vet people out and say that certain companies may work better for their situation. Right. Is that correct?
Yes, and people are always hesitant to put their loved one in a community. And I admit, when I put my wife in the memory care community, I just felt so guilty about doing it, because I said I was never going to. But there comes a time when you're going to have to. Either that or have somebody come in full-time care at home. And but what I learned after about 6 months of that is I got to be the spouse again. I wasn't doing that heavy caregiving load, changing clothes and showering and eating and all. I mean, I could do anything I wanted to there, but I got to hold her hand again. I got to watch TV with her. I got to listen to music with her. I got to go out and sit in the courtyard with her. I got to walk around with her. And because I realized this is the last chapter of our love life. And it got to be, it was something that I could look forward to and not have to worry about I'm being overloaded and I'm tired all the time and all that, which is the caregivers get stressed out, they're worn out. This is a way that they can at least have a happy ending to this thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you were able to at least revise what those last memories are, right?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking back and thinking about all the obstacles and how hard it was, you got
Yes.
to focus in on the good memories versus the frustrations that may have been there at the end.
And it's exactly what we tell them. If you're having, and people always want to know, when is it time that I need to look at putting my loved one in a community? It's when all your memories are bad. You don't want to end the situation in that kind of a setting.
Yeah.
You want to have it where you look forward to seeing them, and it's and I'll tell you what, the people that you're dealing with in these communities, the CNAs are the main ones, the certified nursing assistants, are the ones that are hands-on in this, and you want to make sure that you tell them the great things that they're doing. It's like when I was a manager in the oil industry, I always said, I'd try to find somebody doing something good and tell them about it. And that's not what they hear in those communities. What they hear are the problems. So it's great if you can go in there. I used to, bring them cookies. I can't cook, but I can bake.
Yeah.
And so I'd bring them cookies, or I'd stop and get them milkshakes, and I'd always look them down every time and tell them that it was what they were doing was taking care of the most important person in my life, and they were spending more time than I was with them. And the amazing thing that happened with that, I still have, there were 3 primary ones during those 3 years that took care of her. And they still call me up once in a while, and they talk about what in their mind was the good old days when somebody paid attention to them and told them, there were things that we had to correct, but they got to hear some good things that they were doing too. You got to treat people nice.
Yeah. Well, I think that people lose sight of the human element in all aspects, right? And I believe that there are a lot of CNAs out there that go in with a good intention. I think they get burnt out. I
Yes.
think that they've got to hear the positives. I think that's just
Right.
in every industry, and that it sounds like that's not any different when it comes to
Correct.
CNAs, especially when you're dealing with people who are losing memories. I know that
Yes.
when my grandmother lived with us a long, long time ago, I got to the point where I'd come home and she used to cook this snack for me every day. And she's like, "Do you want it?" And then there were some days that I didn't want the snack, and I'd go into the bedroom and I'd walk back into the living room, and she asked me the same question, right? And that was hard to see,
Yeah.
right? And so I could only imagine living with a spouse in that similar situation. So I think getting the help, because I'm sure it is a huge emotional toll that you take when you're
Yes.
trying to care for a loved one who's going through this disease.
Right. Very much so.
But,
Yeah, and you get isolated. I mean, your friends and even relatives, they don't want to come around anymore because it's awkward. They don't know how to talk to the person. So the caregiver ends up being alone, plus taking on all of the chores that their spouse was once doing, they've got to do now. And some of those you're not going to be very good at. It's like I said, the one I couldn't do was cook. And I said the only advantage of her Alzheimer's was she couldn't remember how bad the last meal I fixed was, so she'd always eat the next. I had to suffer through my bad cooking.
how does someone who needs to get this information, what's the best way for them to get that information?
They can either go into the office, and we have a ton of brochures that are helpful for different aspects of it. They can call somebody and talk to them about it, or they can go to alz.org. And there are a lot of resources that are out there that they can get to. When my wife first got this disease, the amount of money being spent on research by the National Institute of Health was 500 million. Cancer, for instance, was getting 6 billion. And we have gotten and a lot of it, we can applaud some of our own people here. Tom Cole, who's a U.S. representative out of Norman, was very influential in getting that increased. And it is the fastest rising increase in healthcare fund for a disease in the history. And we're up to about $4 billion. And as a result of that, we're seeing some real results. A lot of it, they're looking at prevention sort of things. High blood pressure is not a good thing. As a matter of fact, the recent one I think they said was if you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol and are diabetic. If you can control all those and get them down to the base level, your brain is going to be operating at 6 years younger than what it is.
I know that we've got that baby boomer generation that are starting to get into their 70s and 80s, and so I definitely
You're
think,
talking about me now.
well, we have a large segment that I feel like we're really going to start hitting
Yes.
those years where people are going to start seeing the effects, and so I think the more educated that we get beforehand, and the more that we get the word out that there are support groups, I think it's going to be beneficial to the public.
Like I said, when my wife got diagnosed, we looked for a cure, and of course there was none. And we looked for hope and couldn't find any. And finally searched for help and found the Alzheimer's Association. I'm convinced that saved my life, because I would have just been swamped with what was going on. And we'd watched her dad go through this. And one thing, I don't know, you probably don't want to talk about it, but there just aren't any doctors around here. We're known as a neurological desert when it comes to Alzheimer's. There's only a handful of doctors that I would recommend somebody go see.
Wow.
They just, they deal, there's a lot of neurologists, but they deal with, migraines and other types of things. It's hard to make money on Alzheimer's because there just was no treatment. Now we do have some treatments. One of them will extend, well, what does it do? It slows the decline down by 39%. So you get another year or two in the early stage. And you look for that to try to see, okay, maybe that will be the link between the next discovery that makes a difference. But this is the most expensive disease that we face in America. And if we don't do anything about it, and this is what Congress finally realized, by 2050 it'll cost $1 trillion a year, and that'll bankrupt everything there is. So
Yeah.
that was the impetus to go ahead and raise some money on this and get things going.
Well, I know that I definitely learned a lot today, especially with the support groups. And I think that, I've recently, like I said, I've met Herb about a year ago, and just kind of learning his story, learning the resources that are out there to learn about this disease and how to get support and help with the disease has been something that I've been grateful for, so that I can share that with other people. And that's why we had Herb on today. Herb, why don't you remind people one last time where they can go to get additional resources?
Okay. One of the best things is our phone number. That's the national phone number that'll get you in touch with a counselor who can put you in touch with support groups, education programs, and everything. And that's 800-272-3900. And other than that, we have our office here in Oklahoma City and one up in Tulsa, and we've got some smaller offices around. Just get with us and let us help you, because it's a disease you don't want to fight alone.
Yeah. And what was that website again?
The website is alz.org, and it's just cram-packed full of information from volunteer opportunities to what's going on with research. It's a great source to go to get started in this. But the best bet, like I said, is to get in touch with somebody like me or somebody in one of the offices, and we can get you on the track.
All right. Well, we appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this session with Herb, and learning a little bit more about the Alzheimer's Association. And until next time.